So that was not the best. The Yankees fall short 10-6 against the Rangers. Was pretty much some of the most uninspiring baseball that you'll find in the first 8 innings. And then all of a sudden, Duke Ellis came up to the plate. Jazz Chisholm broke the dude's shin probably with how hard he hit that ball. Trent Grisham pinch hit for Juan Soto, assuming the game was over. And all of a sudden, the Yankees had a shot to actually come back and do what they did. I don't remember how long ago it was, Gary, but they came back from like a 9-run deficit and beat the Texas Rangers like 15 years ago. It was giving me those vibes.
That was back when we had a different manager.
Well, there you go.
Different leadership.
But I could tell you right then and there, and I mean, I texted you it. I was like, this isn't going to end the way we want it to. And sure enough, Giancarlo Stanton hit an absolute laser, like a Gary Sheffield level laser into left field. Do you?
Yeah.
And
can't hit anymore.
God, Wyatt Langford, man, I don't want to see that guy ever again.
He's a good player, isn't he?
He walks off yesterday, and then he goes up and he robs the home run. Mind you, the Yankees, this is Yankees Unloaded, by the way. Mind you, the Yankees were down 10-2 with 2 outs in the 9th inning on the road with Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, all those guys on the bench. And they strung together this improbable comeback, and they almost had 9 runs. If Langford sneezes or something and isn't able to get to the ball, it goes over the wall, it is a 10-9 game with Anthony Rizzo coming up. Now, I have no idea what Rizzo would have done, but could you imagine if Anthony Rizzo hit a home run after that? I don't even know what we're talking about.
Well, I mean, I feel like everyone knew that game was over, and
it was.
You partly did as well. I mean, I feel like I just watched an NBA team. You see a team down 30 in the 4th quarter. They end up losing by 11 and rooting the spread. So that's what I saw out of the Yankees. Today was just a huge nothing burger, which was interesting because you came into this series having said, hey, the Baltimore Orioles are playing the White Sox. They're just beating the brakes off that team, right? Team that we didn't take care of ourselves. But Chicago actually beat Baltimore today. That was the interesting thing. So a lot of Yankees fans were looking at today's game and thinking, wow, this seems like a really good opportunity to play some of your best baseball. You guys should be really inspired by that outcome. And yet, it seemed like the Yankees didn't get the concept there. And not only that, Jake, it seems like the Yankees haven't gotten this concept each of the last 3 years. The Yankees record in 2022 in the second half, 500 baseball, 35-35. 2023, they are 33-38 to miss the postseason, right? Everyone said, oh, everyone's going to be fired. This is what's going to hold them accountable. No, they did nothing. Everyone returned, same old, same old. Then we get into 2024. You think their record's better in the second half? Well, a lot of people who listen to our show, they know it's not because they watch the Yankees every day. The Yankees this year in the second half of the year, they are 26-27. They are below 500 baseball since the beginning of July. That is despicable. It's gross. And that should tell you the story right there is that the Yankees don't get better as the season goes on. They actually statistically get worse. This is not an opinion that Jake and I put together. This is us doing our homework, finding the numbers, and then presenting it to you guys so that you guys can make the opinion and share with us what you guys come away with. Now, if you ask us what we think is the problem, you can easily draw the conclusion that this is a problem with leadership. It doesn't seem like an inspired group of men. It doesn't seem like coming into this game like the game meant anything. It actually felt like one of those games, those exhibition games that teams play in Japan where no one cares. That's actually what that felt like. And so I'm sitting there watching it. Jake, I'm going to ask you, did that game seem important to you, pitch one?
I mean, it was important to me and it was important to you because you and I, you know, with the normal just understanding of how this whole thing works when you're trying to make a run at the postseason, saw that Orioles score and we're like, wow, opportunity knocks. And this, by the way, is why this encapsulates everything. Okay. The Orioles, this is why you're constantly a half game back, a half game up. You can't pull away. And this is the Yankees. This is essentially what the Yankees are this year. We have to temper our expectations. You know how we're supposed to look at this now, Gary? Oh, awesome. The Orioles lost, so it doesn't matter if we lose today. We don't actually gain or lose anything in the
second
standings.
Chance. That's what they call it.
That is disgusting.
Yeah.
And I know no one said that, right? I'm not saying Boone. Definitely do not misquote me and say Boone said. Boone did not say that. My point, though, is actions speak louder than words. And their actions today did not look. This looked like another game. This was not Derek Jeter or a Kobe Bryant. This was not a Mamba moment where you're like, we need to come in here. We need to kick the crap out of the Rangers. We need to win this rubber game because we've had 10 straight rubber matches. How is that even possible? Finish off the freaking series. That's insane. But the point I'm making here is they need to come out with some intensity, some fire. And I'll tell you right now, Stroman totally missed the plot. He was not good today. But I'll also understand this. Stroman has had his moments. He's been a roller coaster. You mentioned that in our last episode. You have to understand Stroman is probably going to give you an outing every now and then where he gets absolutely eviscerated. I don't even think he got eviscerated today. He wasn't good, but I can deal with if I have an offense with Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, Jazz Chisholm, the way he's playing, Giancarlo Stanton, right? All those home runs in the lineup. I got Gleyber Torres, who's been a model of consistency lately as a leadoff hitter. I got a, revitalized Anthony Rizzo, some people would say, right? I got Anthony Volpe hitting well lately. And they keep telling us how Alex Verdugo is hitting over 350 the last 7 games or whatever. Like, I give a rip. The point I'm making here is that should be enough. That lineup should be enough to score more than 5 runs. So am I going to put the entire game on Stroman? Absolutely not. Did he pitch well? Absolutely not. But at the same time, this was uninspiring baseball. And Gary, this wasn't just the offensive thing that I was worried about. Juan Soto went 3 for 3. He was great today. Okay. He also had a walk. He had a home run. If he didn't hit the home run, who knows if they would have even scored. But the point I'm making here is that it wasn't just in the offensive game, Gary. The defense was putrid. I mean, I love Juan Soto, and we'll get into the defensive aspect of his game later on, as well as Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge was not good defensively. He had a 95% chance catch rate that he let turn into a double because he was out of positioning, which, of course, no one cares when Aaron Judge is hitting bombs. But he has actually gone longer than any point in his season this year without a home run. So Aaron Judge is going to have to be held accountable. And this is what happens when you're an 80 and 60 ball club in September. I mean, you still have to somehow find a way to, I think, at least win 14 games the rest of the month. Are they even going to do that, Gary? So that's the thing, is that I think it's not just the offense. It's not just the pitching. The Yankees played uninspiring baseball all across the board, all 3 phases.
Yeah, I think I can deal with lapses in judgment periodically, right? Anecdotally. Maybe once every few months, you see a play and say, oh, that guy, he forgot the outs, right? Oh, Anthony Volpe, he was jogging from third. This is a second-year player. He was actually jogging, a valet jog from third to home, and we actually didn't score because of that lack of hustle. Oh, Alex Verdugo hit a ground ball to second base. He didn't run it out. The second baseman bobbles it, and he doesn't make it to first base because of it, right? I can deal with that every so often, as long as, Jake, we have the context here. Here's the context. The context is that the Yankees predominantly need to play better in the second half. And if they had been, so if we're talking 2022, 2023, and we'd made some World Series runs, or hell, we even won a World Series, I can deal with seeing a player every once in a while essentially sticking out like a sore thumb from our championship pedigree that we've proven. But here's where I take exception to it, and I think this falls on Aaron Boone solely, is that when I watch players play in New York, they don't come to play their hardest. As everyone tells me, playing for the Yankees is this place where you're under a microscope. It's the bright lights. Well, then why isn't it implied that effort is at its highest from all of these players? Why is that the case?
Jorge
Why is it the
Posada
case?
pointed this out, by the way.
Right. Why is it the case that Aaron Judge gets a ground ball into the outfield? He lackadaisically throws the ball into the infield, and we end up just scoring from first base on essentially a single to left center field, right? You'd think, oh, that should never happen. Then you've got the play from Volpe where he doesn't run to home. We had the play from DJ LeMahieu. We had the play from Grisham, ground ball in the center field, right to him. He lollipops the ball into the infield, and the runner just goes right into second base. Not a problem, right? And we actually only got one moment of accountability the whole year, and it was from Gleyber Torres. And it wasn't from Gleyber himself. It was from Aaron Boone. At one point or another, and we saw multiple cases where Gleyber Torres wasn't showing any fire, no hustle whatsoever, didn't seem like he even wanted to be on the field, and Aaron Boone said he's got to come off the field, right? It's exactly what we're saying he should be doing for Clay Holmes, but he does it for Gleyber Torres. Gleyber Torres comes off the field. He sits not one game, multiple games, and then comes back. Hey, Jake, what version of Gleyber Torres have we gotten since? Oh, that's right. We got 2022 and 2023 version of Gleyber Torres. It essentially saved his season. It probably saved him from getting no contract with the Yankees next year to having a chance of getting a contract. So really what we're saying here is that the Yankees have no pedigree whatsoever to assume players are going to play their best between now and the end of the regular season. That's what we're saying. So when you see moments like this today where people say, why is it that there's a 95th percentile fly ball out to Aaron Judge and he doesn't play it to the best of his ability? Why is it that guys don't know to pick up their third base coach and then run home in Jazz Chisholm? Why are these situations happening consistently? Not in May and July, where you can make these type of mistakes. It's hot out. You can make those mistakes. No, this is September baseball. At September, you need to be playing your best brand of baseball, and the Yankees predominantly play their worst brand of baseball now. Right now. They play awful in July. They play awful in September, and then they go into early October. Does this list of players on this lineup, do they play their best brand of baseball? Does Aaron Judge play his best brand of baseball in October? No, he plays his worst. Why is that? And we need to start getting to the answer at some point or another. I understand. I don't expect the Yankees broadcast to be talking about during the Yankee game who's responsible for why these guys aren't playing their best brand of baseball, because it's not a fun topic for them. They're trying to grow this. Remember, these people are trying to help you guys feel good about the Yankees. That's their job, right? Yes, their job is to cover the game, but you're not going to have people who are paid to cover the Yankees be like, who's responsible for this garbage? It's not going to happen, but we sure can. We can. And so we will.
Certainly can.
We certainly
and we
can.
will.
We have the authority, and we're going to do that. So for me right now, Jake, this is my conclusion. The Yankees, you can pick one play over another and say, why did Rizzo do this? Why did this guy do that? Why do they all do what they do? When you need them to do something, don't they always do what you thought they would do when it matters? Why is that? And so we've got to really pull back the hood, right? Lift up the hood and say, why? And you guys give me a real answer that doesn't circulate back to their leader, not Aaron Judge, who's a player. No, their manager who pops bubble gum and puts on a different color watch band every day. It's him.
I like that you said that. Now, I also want to say this because, yeah, to your point, going into every single play that we have an issue with just becomes tedious and people will just stop watching. Just kidding. No, they won't. You guys like us. But regardless, it would get annoying, right? To just constantly be like, this play, this play, this play. But how about let's just say this, okay? I mean, we'll talk about the Aaron Boone quote on Alex Verdugo that, I mean, you could ask Gary. We do almost like, I would call it a pre-show production meeting. And because we care about this show, we really want it to be great. And I was not too happy, Gary, was I? When I read you that, I was fuming. I couldn't believe. So that quote we'll get to in a sec. But what I want to say before we get into the quote, Gary, it's very simple. When you talk about professional athletes, whether people want to admit it or not, I don't care. Aaron Judge is 32 years old. The identity of your team is your manager.
Correct.
They essentially absorb the identity from the manager, and that becomes the identity of the team, right? We know this. We know there's certain coaches out there who would be called out in other sports because, yeah, they can't, like, we know their win-loss record's terrible in November, right? I mean, how many people called out, what's his face? Cliff Kingsbury. He can't, like, the second half of the season, he just totally shits down his leg. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
he doesn't, it suddenly changes everything.
Yeah.
People are making adjustments, and now what are you going to do about it? Because everyone says this Yankees team gets judged on what they do. How far do they get? And then Derek Jeter gives you some quote every year. They go talk to Derek Jeter, and he says, yeah, I mean, and he gets to do it because he went and won already, and he doesn't have to play anymore. And then he's also not in our front office. And he says, yeah, if you don't win a title in New York, it's just a colossal failure. It's a dump, right? Yeah. And yet we get to the end of the year, we never win in 15 years, not once. We actually never even got to the World Series, not once. Well, how am I supposed to cover it in any other way other than a failure? And then wonder, is there someone else out there that can help us get to that point? Because if there's not, then that leads me to believe that we don't have the personnel, which Hal Steinbrenner assured me that we did. Well, so that's where I'm confused.
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously it's not all on Aaron Boone, but at some point or another, when you have, I mean, he's got hella consistency. Can we talk about that for a second? Very consistent. I mean, his teams are great. They get off to great starts at the beginning of the year when it's low leverage. Okay. The hitters aren't hitting the way they should. Your pitchers can be a little bit better, you know, give you more length, right? Mm-hmm. The way you use your bullpen doesn't actually have any sort of, you know, repercussions until way later in the year. It's just kicking the can down the road like it's a salary cap. Yeah, we'll just use the bullpen like crazy at the beginning of the year because, you know, the reality is when we use the bullpen later on in the year, that's going to be a problem, but that's tomorrow's problem, not today.
Right.
And that's why Aaron Boone has such a good track record at the beginning of seasons. Well, when push comes to shove and shit gets tough, which is how a 162 game season works, and you have hitters hitting and you got pitchers that are exhausted and you haven't made any adjustments based on how you utilize them, I think we're seeing it full force right now. I think the pitchers are absolutely exhausted. I think the bullpen is gassed. I will say that. But the thing, Gary, is this. Aaron Boone, it's not that he's just allergic to September and October or in August, whatever. It's not that he doesn't like those months. Those months have to be managed in a completely different fashion than March, than April, than May. I think we can all agree on that. And so we've seen Boone now for what, 7 years, 8 years? We've seen him do the same thing over and over again. And the reality is last year, when the Yankees only won, 82 games, so they won 2 more than what they have currently right now, they decided instead of Hal, you know, being like, this is the time to move on from him and Cashman have a clean break. No, they decided to double down and make Aaron Boone the manager of the 2024 Yankees. And we are seeing the same thing. We talked about it at the beginning of the year because we're very new to this. I mean, not really because this is our 129th episode, but we were like very seasoned veteran. This. I know. But we were new to this, right? When we first started, we not new to podcasting, but new to covering a team for an entire year like this. Like I've never covered a team like this. I've never covered a team 100 however many games. Like before this, I was covering 17 game schedules.
Yeah, I'm sorry I did this to you because this was my idea, and I feel bad.
No, don't feel bad. I'm loving it. If I didn't have this, I couldn't watch Yankees baseball. Like I would just I'd be.
Can I ask you a question, by the way?
I'd be freaking out. I'd be that guy that you shared. The guy who he always goes, the older guy, he always goes crazy.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So let's keep in mind for what's happened, okay? Because I don't want to come on too strong here. I want people to feel like you guys come to the conclusion that you wanted to come to, and I didn't have anything to do with it, okay? But I want to stay with me here with this analogy.
Yeah.
So does anybody watch the Daytona 500? Jake, do you know how many laps they race at the Daytona 500?
Isn't it 500?
It actually is 200. Okay.
Okay. I totally forgot. I used to watch NASCAR all the time.
That's perfectly okay. But if you'd watch, so let's just pretend that I was a racer, okay?
Mhm.
And every single year for 15 years in a row, you watched me lead after 180 laps, okay? Or in this case, since we're talking about Aaron Boone in the second half of the year, we'll just go right at 100, right? Halfway through the race. In all 15 years, I was in first place in the race. And at some point between lap 101 and the final lap, lap 200, at some point or another, I ended up in a ball of flames against the wall each and every time. How excited would you be in 2025 if I was in first place at the Daytona 500 in lap 102? How excited should you be?
Did Ricky Stenhouse, was he in that race? I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
They call him Wreck-It Ricky for a reason. No, I get what you're saying, man. Totally get what you're saying.
They want me to ignore what's happened in the past.
Yeah.
So we'll give it to you. Let's ignore it. Ignore the past, right? Ignore what happened in 2022. Ignore what happened in 2023. We ended up getting a Lemon and Donaldson and all these guys, Hicks. We had to get them off the roster. Everyone was going down with injuries. Judge gets hurt, right? And they come up with all these reasons as to why, the context. Let's ignore it. So we say, all right, you guys went and got Soto. I don't feel like you did enough with the rotation, but we're going to see what happens with Loaizaga, Stroman. I'm not sure. Let's see what happens. And sure enough, Jake, more than half of the audience, not everybody, but a lot of people ignore the context and say, show it to me this year, I guess, right? You've convinced me. Show it to me. And we get here in August and September and they lose, right? They lose. And then they're asking us to ignore it, not hold anyone accountable. Suddenly asking for someone's job is overbearing. It's reactionary. It's short-sighted. That's the way this is covered. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the reason why a lot of people who cover this team, they don't call for anyone's job because it's viewed and covered and gaslit as short-sighted. This is not a short-sighted decision. Aaron Boone should have been let go probably 2 years ago. And we're sitting here justifying why he's not the only problem. You're absolutely right, Jake. You brought this up. Aaron Boone is not the only problem, but he is a problem and he's not part of the solution. The solution means, oh, we have a good manager who absolutely can win the World Series. Absolutely. You mean to tell me that Brian Cashman never, not one time in 15 years, has built a championship roster, a team that should have won a title? You mean to tell me Aaron Boone's entire tenure, he's never had the pieces to go win the World Series, not one time ever? I have a hard time believing that he never once had the personnel to do it. And so that's what they're selling me. So the way I take, this is the way I take this team. I believe Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman and Hal Steinbrenner are all this three-headed monster where everyone has joint control over what's happening on the field. Either they're making excuses, either they're telling us to hold on one more year and not be too short-sighted, and then they do the exact same thing over again. And then what else? What else does anyone have to offer me other than counting regular season wins, which most likely comes by leading the division by 9 games in the first half of the year and then collapsing in the second half of the year? That's what we do. So, Jake, they want me to ignore context. They want me to ignore what's happening. They want me to ignore what's happening at closer. All these different things. They want me to believe that it's not Aaron Boone's fault. It is semi these other people's fault and semi his fault. No, it is a lot of his fault. It is. Your leader, it is your fault. Cliff Kingsbury, you remember what happened with Cliff Kingsbury, by the way? Does he still?
Yeah, he's the offensive coordinator for the Commanders now.
Oh, he's not coaching the Cardinals anymore, that second half coach. Oh, that's right. The Cardinals had some common sense and said, this guy doesn't win any games in the second half of the year. Get rid of him.
Except he had no common sense when they hired him. He had a negative college record.
Oh, he was horrible. There was no reason to hire him, but he was this good-looking young dude, right? That they said, oh, he's going to be the next Sean McVay because he's young and attractive.
And
so
has
they
LA looks
hired
in
him.
his hair.
Yeah, same gel. So that's the reason why he was hired. But eventually the Cardinals said, yes, you had an injury to Kyler. You know, we had Kyler Murray down. You had all these different excuses. Yet they said the context matters. You're never winning in the second half. Get rid of them.
Yeah.
And here they are. Kyler Murray's playing the best football of his life with a real head coach. That's the way this whole thing works in sports. You put people in position.
Absolutely.
This is the reason why people said, give me Donnie Baseball. Give me Derek Jeter. They're not saying that Donnie Baseball and Derek Jeter are the most brilliant baseball minds in the world. You know what they're actually saying? I like their leadership.
That's and I want something different. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of losing the same way. How many times do the Yankees either lose a game like this where you're just like, oh, okay, they just didn't even show up today. Like, if they didn't show up, why am I even watching? Not only do they do that, because keep in mind, everyone's busy. You get home from work at 8. Some of you go to bed at 9. I don't even know what that is. But some of you will go to bed early, and your time is valuable, very valuable. You work late, you may be having to go to school, whatever. Yankee games are 3 hours long. If they're putting out that effort, I don't blame you for not watching. And I see it all the time in the comment section. I'm just going to wait until the Yankees unloaded because I turned on the game and I didn't even see effort. And I'm like, I can't even really blame you there. What I'll say is this, though. You know, when it comes to the Yankees and all of that, right? Aaron Boone, and of course, you know, I think there's more to it than just Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman. I think it is a deeper organizational thing. And I actually want to bring up something, kind of going a little bit off here, but I want to bring up Reggie Jackson. He was in the front office for a long time. Very well respected. He's very high on Clint Frazier. Guys like he openly would come out and, you know, applaud certain players and would actually be very critical and say, hey, this guy needs to get more reps. You're not like he defended Clint Frazier. He eventually ended up leaving. And you know what organization he went to?
Who?
The Astros.
No way.
And
I didn't even know this.
Yes.
Wow.
He's actually the right-hand man, I think, to the baseball operations guy. So, or the owner. So here's the deal. You might look at that and be like, Reggie's washed up. Who cares? He's just a guy in the front office. I look at that going back to what, you know, Gary was just talking about, how the Yankees, there's nothing like playing for the Yankees. It's just so different. It was, but is it still that way? Because when you go 15 years without winning a World Series, and Reggie Jackson, who's been in your front office for 20, 30 years, now he moves on because he didn't agree with the way you were viewing baseball and he was viewing baseball. You had your differences. Obviously, he left on good terms. It wasn't like, you know, negative or anything like that. But he goes to the Astros, where baseball is now. And so I just feel like the Yankees are quickly, and this is why I think it's so imperative, because they keep telling you, oh, they only have one guaranteed year of Juan Soto, right? You keep hearing that. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't care if they have one guaranteed year or 11 guaranteed years of Juan Soto. If you're not trying to win a World Series every year as the New York Yankees having a $300 million payroll, then I have issues already. But
who gives a rip? Who gives a rip?
Yeah, but what I'm going to say is this, dude. They're becoming the Cowboys of the MLB. They have literally, they are not dodging allegations. Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, and I've talked with Jerry Jones. He came up to me when I was covering a Senior Bowl event. Yes. So I like Jerry. I do. Mm-hmm. But as much as I like Jerry almost drafted Johnny Manziel, and his son saved him from making a horrible decision. And as much as I like Jerry, the Cowboys are the most... I think they're actually, of all franchises in the U.S., they are the most, you know, the most valuable, right? And yet, when's the last time they made it out of the divisional round of the playoffs? We're talking about not the same, because that's not the NFC title game, but we're talking about kind of the same thing here. The Yankees haven't made it. It hasn't gone as long as like I've been alive.
Right.
But we're talking now, they're getting to that point where if they don't win soon, I mean, you could say, oh, we'll sign Juan Soto. We'll have 5 years. We were saying that in 2019. We said it in 2022. When does it end? And so I bring this all up to basically say it's World Series or bust for Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman. Will Brian Cashman get fired? Probably not. But Aaron Boone, I actually think is on the hot seat. I think he belongs on the hot seat. I think Brian Cashman belongs on the hot seat. I just think that they play favoritism with him.
How would they not be fired? Isn't that crazy? How would they not be fired? I actually think that's the most important thing with this Yankees organization. As much as I believe Aaron Boone's lack of professionalism in his current job title, as much as that's despicable to me and how important I think that really is, I think the most important relationship in the building, okay, for the New York Yankees, and it's going to change the trajectory of this team for the next 20 years, is the relationship between Hal Steinbrenner and Brian Cashman. I think that relationship has, and this is a relationship, I can't even say it's a sour relationship. It's bittersweet. It is something that's filled with a past that Hal Steinbrenner really misses. And it's led them down to this long marriage of failure. It is failure. Winning regular season games. This is not me saying this. This is Derek Jeter saying this. I'm going to quote him. Winning regular season baseball games and getting to the divisional series and the championship series and getting swept by your rival is in no way is there a consolation there. It's a complete dump. It's a failure. Okay. And the Yankees want us to believe that in 2017, because that's where they're hanging their hat, right? They defended Brian Cashman coming back to this team because of what happened in 2017, right? They said, well, the reason that we didn't fire the GM is because we believe that Brian Cashman built a championship team that should have won the World Series in 2017. And then we say, well, we know you're lying because you fired your manager.
Yeah.
We know you're lying. We know you don't really believe that. It just got to the point down the road in 2020 and 2021 where this all continued. And then we looked at it and said, well, who's the problem here? Well, it's not our GM. Well, he's been here forever. Yeah. He's been here forever. And so I guess duped. The calling card.
I thought I was duped. I used to defend Brian Cashman. I did.
I give you credit for putting your hand up because a lot of people won't do that. Winning 110 games, it's very difficult to go into October, okay? Very difficult to go into October and say, this guy's not doing his job when the team wins 110 games, to which once you've won 110 games and you believe, well, if you win that many games, it must be the manager. The Dodgers look at it this way. Dodgers fans look at it this way. Dodgers fans look at it and say, Dave Roberts has been our biggest problem. It's not our front office he's been their biggest problem. So why is it that the Los Angeles Dodgers can win a lot of regular season games, right? Regardless of what they do in the second half, everybody expects the Dodgers to get into October baseball and fail. Why? Is it because of their GM? It's not, is it? It's because of Dave Roberts. Now, I don't speak very highly of Dave Roberts. I think he's a great dude, but he's made some questionable decisions, right? Questionable.
Absolutely.
In October, that's probably lost them some games, and he's taken the blame for it. But
he also
eventually he won a championship. So you guys can talk all you want about there were no stands out there. There were no fans. The Yankees played in front of nobody in San Diego. I was there. I was living in San Diego at the time. There were no fans. The Yankees went out there and lost. So let's be very clear. When we lost to Tampa, Gary, that's me, was sitting out in the outfield, peeking through with binoculars, watching the game while everybody else was watching on TV.
Was that fun?
And so it was the dumbest thing I ever saw. But consider this. We all were comfortable blaming Dave Roberts for that situation. And then later on, he undid it. He undid it, and he's still taking blame down the road. It's 2024. We're only 3 years in advance. Imagine they didn't win that World Series. Is Dave Roberts still the manager? Probably not.
Oh, no chance.
Thank
Zero.
you.
Zero. And so it really just goes back to the whole thing with Boone. this has been a pretty long segment because we're not trying to be doom and gloom here on this channel. But I mean, the Yankees were about to lose this game 10-2 to the Rangers in a game where they, like, in September, they have to win these games. The Orioles already lost to the White Sox. Total, just pissed away a huge opportunity. But I want to bring up this quote, Gary. Chris Kirshner, thank God he asked this question. And he's been doing a great job of getting these quotes for us because we're not asking. We're not there. So I got to give credit where credit's due, right? Okay. He's beat up Aaron Boone on Alex Verdugo's running. He's beat up. He's playing his ass off. He picks his spots. You see him beat it out when he needs to. He beats out the force play the other night to beat the double play. Sometimes I wish it looked better on certain ones, but when he hits the one hopper to second baseman, he's got it. I get the look. I don't have any issue. Again, I don't have any issue with how hard he's playing the game. End quote. What in God's name? How on earth? And to me, at this point, and we continue to learn more about this team every day. I say it all the time. And I have become a way more intelligent fan of the game and someone that covers the game, analyst, if you will, doing this show. So before, I might not have realized. But now this stuff, you and I, every day, we're texting each other like, he said this? And so I am not one of those people. Like, ask anybody on my coverage of the Rams in the NFL. I don't care about quotes ever. It's different with baseball. It's absolutely different with baseball because quotes are actually going to impact tomorrow's lineup. Quotes are going to impact who starts, who's in the bullpen, who's closing. Quotes do matter. And it also gives you a chance. You're center stage. Obviously, your players know they can hear you. All right. They're not that far away within the earshot. This is your chance. And the problem with this quote that I have, and we do have a mailbag that we'll get to after this. So sorry, Ed W. Hopefully you're still with us.
He is.
Yeah, he definitely is. So anyway, the problem with this quote is that up until this point, Aaron Boone really hasn't been asked about Alex Verdugo. And you had mentioned earlier, I don't know if it was on this, we talked a while beforehand, but Gleyber Torres, him getting benched saved his season. Okay. Mm-hmm. But it still was a pick on him. A guy that had been around for a long time. He came up, and Michael K brought this up. He came up to the top step of the dugout. He wanted everyone to see the example he was setting. Why on earth do you do that to him? But Alex Verdugo, who's been here for not even a full year, okay, a guy that already had concerns with the taking plays off and not running and not hustling. And Alex Cora, you and I we both talked about it. I thought Alex Cora was an asshole for that. I think Alex Cora was right. And now Boone, I get the look. I don't have any issue with how hard he's playing the game.
No issue.
Okay, so John Birdie today he went 4 for 4. Jason Dominguez was hitting the ball all over the yard, had another home run, his 6th of the year. And those guys aren't playing, right? They're not even in the big leagues yet. But right. Alex Verdugo, who's manning left field, he hits a ground ball to second base. Like he said, I wished it looked better on certain ones, but he hits the one hopper to second baseman and he's got it. I get the look. What is he talking about? He hit the ball to second base and he looked like he was going to keel over and die. Why? And then he'll say, Verdugo said he's fine. He's not injured. Well, I saw a great quote from it was a great tweet and I can't find it, but it was awesome. And it was really kind of how I feel about the whole situation. It was Tom Kosensky. I am so done with it. If Alex Verdugo is injured, he shouldn't be playing. If Alex Verdugo is healthy, he shouldn't be playing. So I don't care if he is or he isn't. Love that tweet. That's how I feel. If Alex Verdugo's injured, I'm sorry he's injured, but he shouldn't be playing. And if he's not injured and he's healthy, he's not good enough anyway to be playing over Oswaldo Cabrera, over John Birdie, over Jason Dominguez. Now, those guys not being called up, that is Cashman's problem. Cashman calls guys up. Boone does not. So Cashman deserves blame for not calling him up and waiting. But Boone has Cabrera that he can play in left field. Okay. And I'm not even going to get into Grisham and all that. That's whatever. Cabrera should be in left field. Cabrera should be in left field over Verdugo.
Given Boone's choices. Yes.
Given
the choice he's got.
That's on Boone. That's
I agree.
my issue.
Can I say something about, because I want to address the quote directly.
Yeah.
And when Aaron Boone says, I'm fine with the way that he plays, sometimes I would like it to look better, but he's essentially saying it is what it is, right? It is what it is. That's what that means. Now, here's the way I take it. We've all been to high school, most of us. Most of us finished high school. We got our diploma, okay? Now, all of the students who were in the running to be have some of the highest grades in school, right? Straight A's, all A's, and a B. How are their parents usually? They're strict. Usually. So you can point to, oh, that kid's really smart, and that kid, he just tends to, oh, we're in AP biology, AP chemistry. All these classes are really difficult. But most of the students who are excelling in high school are usually giving high effort, because that's what school, especially at the high school level, that's really what that is. It's about being obedient and doing what you're told and turning in stuff on time. Most of the students who have very strict parents, right, they do well. That's how this works. That's what the manager's job is. You hit a ground ball to second base. I understand the concept. I understand how to have a job. I didn't work hard every day I've ever had a job. There have been days where you don't work your hardest. There are days where you do shortcut the process. But guess what? Sometimes you have someone above you that tells you that's not acceptable. And you say, oh, well, I guess that's not. And you start doing something differently than what you feel like doing on any given day. That's how that works. So when you talk about why is it that I just watch Aaron Judge, and he's predominantly a really good outfielder, fields a ground ball, and he, in middle of September, lobs the ball back into the infield, and the runner scores from first base on a ball that he should have never scored on. The reason that happens is because he did what he felt like in the moment. And he was not considering that somebody else had a higher calling for him. That's why. That is why. That is why Alex Verdugo can chop a ground ball to second base in Boston or in New York and say, I'm going to give this level of effort that I'm comfortable giving. The reason that he can do that, Alex Verdugo never thought Boston would throw him under the bus and get rid of him. He never thought that would happen. They didn't even talk to him about it. They just said, get out of here. We'll trade you to the Yankees. That's what we really think of you. Go play in New York. We don't think you'll do anything. And guess what? They were right. He did nothing. You know why the Red Sox didn't worry about it? The Red Sox said, if Alex Cora, who's willing to call him out publicly, cannot get this guy to work hard, you think Aaron Boone's going to do it? Please.
Mm-hmm. That's
they can't
a great
play
point.
hard in September. So why is he going to fix him? He's not. So you guys can talk all day long. Some of you will be high on Aaron Boone. It's not his fault. It's not all his fault. Some of it's Cashman. You're probably right. But don't tell me that Aaron Boone's going to pull effort out of somebody who hasn't shown consistent effort. His effort was not showing up in New York. It was never going to happen. So here we sit with a player, to your point. If Cashman's not going to call up a player in Jason Dominguez, well, then give me the next best thing that is currently on the roster. And that is Cabrera. Cabrera is a better player, X's and O's wise. He's just a better baseball player, right? He's faster.
Totally ruined him.
He's a better hitter. He's just better. So if he's a better player, he also works hard. I haven't even spent in 120 episodes of this show. We have never once talked about Cabrera not running hard. So why is it that a player who's better than you, who also works harder than you, he's in the gym more, right? He's running out ground balls more, and suddenly I'm not supposed to call for him to be on the field? Of course I will. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. I mean, I two things that really stuck out from last episode that you said: enabler, calling Aaron Boone an enabler. That's what he is. And then your least favorite player to watch was Alex Verdugo. And it was like, I don't care that he's struggling. I don't care. That's not his job is to go up there and do that. If he's not doing well enough, then his boss should step up and be like, okay, hit the pine.
What did they call Boone, by the way? A player's what?
Players coach.
Yeah.
Players
So a
manager.
players coach, you know what calling him a players coach really is? That's like calling a parent your best friend.
Yep. You also said that yesterday.
Yeah, your parent's your best friend. How good is that kid's grades? The
but
one with
the
funny? Parent that's their best friend. Their grades stink.
Oh yeah. Well, isn't it funny how, Alex Verdugo, you just said the reason why he's your least favorite to watch is his lack of effort. Isn't it funny how the next day it was like he hustled that, he beat that one play out. Now he doesn't have to hustle, and he knows that because Aaron Boone's just going to defend him anyway. Aaron Boone literally came out in that quote and was like, yeah, but like he did that like the other day. He actually did that. That is how he addressed the quote. So yeah, I have a lot of issues with the way things are handled. This is the meat and potatoes of the show. I mean, but we have other stuff. But to wrap it
mailbag?
Up, this part of it, then we get into the mailbag. Ed's been waiting forever.
Poor
Ed, but we appreciate you, Ed. But I think just the reality is this: Aaron Boone should be fired if they do not. I'll say at least if they don't get to the World Series. If he doesn't actually improve, I'll give him that. If they lose in 7 games, I'm not firing Aaron Boone. Okay,
right.
You have to have an upgrade, and you can't give it to me like, oh, well, last year, 82 and 80, this is such a better year. Is it? From a managing standpoint, you have way more at your disposal, and you're going to win 14 more games than last year. I mean, that's not a way better year. Maybe 12.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. The context of how he loses is going to matter. We're going to pay attention to it. Now, if he had made it to the World Series like multiple times this last 3 or 4 years, then I probably would tell you, yeah, he's got to cash it in and win now.
Yeah.
But he hasn't even gotten close. So this idea he's been close, no, he hadn't been. The Dodgers were close before they won, right? They went out and lost in Game 7 of the World Series to the cheating scandal, and then they felt like, we should have won. But then they went out and won anyway later on. So the Dodgers were at the end multiple times. The Yankees haven't even gotten to the final stretch of the race, not once. So you got to at least get to that final little 100-yard dash at the end so that I can at least say, yeah, the manager wasn't awful there. But, I mean, you have a roster that's pretty good. I mean, our roster is still pretty good, especially in comparison to these other teams. We're flawed, man. This is a flawed roster, but everybody else is super flawed. We've mentioned this. Everybody else is talking about this now, in large part because they're watching our show. But when you sit here and consider what the Yankees have and what they don't have, well, all the stuff we don't have, most other people don't have it either. But the difference is that in October, a lot of those teams that fail to have a closer, they fail to have a guy to bridge the gap, a 7th or 8th inning guy, that big game starter. You know what they do have? They have leadership. And that's something that the Yankees at some point or another are going to have to insist on. And if not, you're relying on a group of men. And I like these players, but you're relying on these players to lead themselves. And it hasn't worked in the second half, the most important part of the year, 3 years in a row. So is that just something that's bad luck? Or is it what we're suggesting? Is it a trend?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's clearly a trend. I don't believe in bad luck for 7 years. I guess in some cases I might, if you had but I think we know Aaron Boone is not a good manager in high leverage situations, which to me, being that I actually don't think managers are that big of a deal as opposed to other sports. Like I think, like I've always said, an NFL head coach is the most important leader of any of the sports teams. I'm just at that point, man. I'm totally over it. I'm tired of seeing losses like this. I'm tired of us. You don't even have to watch the game to know exactly how they lost. You look at the box score and you're like, okay, yeah, I could already tell. So, all right, let's dive into the mailbag because Ed's been waiting now for almost 50 minutes. So probably the longest opening segment of our show, but we branched off into a bunch of different things, so it was worth it. Mailbag is paraphrased. I'm sorry, Ed. It's a long.
Ed waited 50 minutes for a paraphrased question. It was long. I read it.
Yeah. Because, but anyway, essentially, Ed is asking, are Boone's lies interfering with Holmes' improvement? Because essentially he was saying how, Aaron Boone would say this about Clay Holmes, and then Clay Holmes would go out there, and now he's saying it in his presser, like, yeah, I didn't have it today, right? And he's like, well, no, you haven't had it all year. Like, I mean, most of the year you haven't had it. And so what I would say before I pass it on over to you is that Aaron Boone's lies are interfering not just Holmes' improvement, but this roster. I mean, he's doing it all the time. And I think this is this needs to be said. When you're a player's manager, okay, and you take the heat, I mean, it's not like Boone takes blame. He doesn't really take blame ever, if you really think about it. He always pushes back against stuff. When is he actually taking accountability for something? So he's not truthfully, you can't be both. You can't be a player's manager and then also not take any accountability either. So at that point, you're just basically an enabler and you're being ignorant, because other coaches and managers will be like, that one's on me, right? How many times does Boone say, yeah, I should have been better. I need to be better. I need to do this. And I'm going to just push it right back to my guy, Sean McVay. Every single presser, even when they win, that was on me. Yeah, we got to be better on this. I got to be better here. I got to do a better job. It's constant. So the point I'm saying here is when a manager or a coach steps up and takes the blame, that's when I feel like they're truthfully, really, authentically, 100% a player's manager, because they're defending them, but they're also willing to put the blame on themselves. If you're just pushing blame off the table, I understand New York media gets a rap, right? Oh, New York media is going to go after you. When does Boone get gone after? Who goes after Aaron Boone? Chris Kirshner and a few others ask him some hard-hitting questions every now and then, but when does the media go after Aaron Boone? They don't.
No, not really. Because if you think about it, here's the way it's going to be perceived. Chris Kirshner is going to come out here. He's going to ask a hard-hitting question. Mm-hmm. No one else is asking any hard-hitting questions. And then if he shows up tomorrow and asks another hard-hitting question, today's Wednesday. So by the time you're listening to this show, it's probably Thursday. Got a day off. On Friday, if Chris asks a hard-hitting question, Chris is going to be looked at as someone that Aaron Boone needs to avoid. Why? Because he's the guy asking hard-hitting questions, and all these other jamokes are sitting around asking layup softball questions. That's what, and I'm so confused as to what New York media was supposed to be. Because I remember when my dad came to New York, he was preparing himself for a hard-hitting media. He was sold that image that New York had is that it's no nonsense. There is no place to hide. And if you're not the type of guy who can be accountable, you're going to hate it here. And my dad said, you can go ahead and book me for 30 homers, 100 RBIs, 100 runs, 100 walks. Don't worry about it. I am good. Okay? Yeah. No excuses. If I don't play well, you think my dad was worried about getting booed? They probably never booed my dad. Never. So that's really like where we are. I would say in terms of leadership, though, with the Yankees, I look at leadership kind of like the way you hire an athletic trainer. They're there to hold you accountable. That's really their whole job. They don't have another job. Technically, I could just YouTube a bunch of workouts. You think I need an athletic trainer? Aaron Boone doesn't really know anything about baseball that Aaron Judge doesn't know. You think Aaron Boone played baseball at a level that Aaron Judge hasn't played yet at any point in his career? He was a better baseball player in 2017 as a rookie than Aaron Boone was in his best year in his career. So think of it this way. Aaron Boone still has a role that is important. And that role is I hold these different players accountable and I put them in position to succeed. That's your job. That's it. It's a very simple job, very difficult job, right? So you hire an athletic trainer, and clearly I need an athletic trainer because the way I go to the gym is I go to the gym on a Friday and then I come home and tell my wife, I felt great about going to the gym. I'm going to go Saturday morning. Well, you know what she tells me? You're not going to the gym Saturday morning. And the only way I go to the gym on Saturday is if she tells me I have to go. If she doesn't hold me accountable to go, you think I'm going to the gym? I'm not. I'm not. And that's what this is. So when you circle it back to Alex Verdugo and hitting a ground ball to second base, if your leadership is okay with you not going tomorrow to the gym, you won't go. You are going to do what you feel like doing. And so here we are. This is the situation we find ourselves in, and it's unfortunate. But Jake, this is where players take it. Players can play their way into a strong first half of the year. You can have a Luis Gil. You can have him almost make his way to the All-Star game. You can see a Jose Trevino go to the All-Star game. But how often do you see players that shock you, right? The Luis Gils and Trevino. How often do those players just come out the woodworks and play their best in October? It never happens, does it? Never.
Yeah, it's
that's like kind of where I'm at. It's just a matter. It's a matter of leadership. That's all it is. And people are going to look at it and say, is it our scouting department? Is it this? Is it that? Guys, it's part of that. I think it's part of it. It's part of the equation. But when it really all comes down to it, I almost feel like you can squeeze any piece through the door. And the hard-hitting questions, because I guess the question is whether or not Aaron Boone stunted the growth and development of Clay Holmes. That's really the nature of the question. Mm-hmm. Well, whose growth isn't stunted in the second half of the year? Who's playing better now than they were a month and a half ago? Who? Is it Soto? Nope. Is it Aaron Judge? Nope. He's slumping. Jazz Chisholm. There's your answer. A player that we just acquired. Wasn't a part of the first half of the year, right? Nobody else is playing better today than they were a month and a half ago. Maybe you can argue Anthony Volpe, who's also just fallen off a cliff. Right. So my point here, you need everybody, for the most part, to be playing better than what they were before. The Astros are. You look at the Astros are playing horrible the first part of the year, and they normally play pretty strong in the first half, but they always exclusively play better in the second half. They just always do. And then you get in October and you say, man, we got to run into this team again. Well, it wouldn't have been such a problem. You played them in May, but here we are in October. They're ready to play, and they're not going to make mental mistakes because their manager in Dusty Baker and AJ Hinch, both were the type of people, if they watch Alex Verdugo hit a ground ball, Dusty Baker would have punched him going down first base line. Dusty Baker probably would have clotheslined Alex Verdugo. And I'm being serious. Dusty Baker is one of the nicest men you will ever meet. And yet he will rip your head off. Jim Leland won a World Series with my dad in 1997. Jim Leland would have probably pulled a heater out of his pocket and burnt you with his cigarette running down the first base line. He would have killed you. You were walking down the first base line and he wished it looked better, but you didn't do it anyway. And then you're in the lineup tomorrow. Please. See, those managers would kill you.
They're not, those managers are gone. If we're being honest, like Bruce Bochy, who looks like he's hanging on by a thread at this point, the way he was going over to the mound, man, they even made a comment.
It was like La Russa.
They made a comment. Oh, David Cohn said something that was really funny. He's like, he looks like a caveman or like something like that. It was like, what? They were just like, and they're like, and then Michael Kay had to be like, all right, well, let's be fair here. Like, he's had multiple surgeries. His legs are giving out, all that. The point I'm making, Bochy with the Giants, great manager, fantastic manager. The guys that you're talking about, Leland, right? You're talking about, Bobby Cox, guys like that. Joe Torre is up there. I don't feel like you have the same type of managers, and that's why this league is so close, because there isn't any of those guys that are like way above and beyond. And I think this is part of the problem with the new age of like, yeah, we're just going to get a bunch of guys that can just follow directions and analytics. And you could make the argument, while Dave Roberts has a lot of issues, he might be one of the best managers in the sport. And that says more about the managers and where we are in today's game. But yeah, I think just kind of, appreciate the question, Ed. I think he did interfere with Holmes. I think he interferes with a lot of things. I can't fault, and I've always keep in mind, I've always defended Boone on this. People say, why won't Aaron Boone call up Jason Dominguez? He can't. Only a
Doesn't have
GM
that
can
authority.
He might have a little bit of push, like be able to get into that room and be like, hey, Brian, what are you doing? Call up Jason Dominguez right now. He might even be able to go up to Hal and be like, hey, Brian won't call up Jason Dominguez. I need Jason Dominguez. Like this, and this is happening. I'm not saying it's ever happened, but he might have that jurisdiction. I don't know. But what I do know is that when the guys are on the roster, right, you can blame, Cashman about how weak the roster is, whatever. But the guys that are on the roster, when you have better guys that are constantly sitting the bench for lesser talented players, and then you have kind of that testy approach when somebody asks you a question, you snap back out at them consistently, and you're not ever really holding yourself accountable. I mean, if you really think about it, this is the first time where I've thought about Gary. Aaron, like, I have no issue with Aaron Boone personally. If I saw Aaron Boone, I'd shake his hand. I'd say hi, whatever, right? I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, like screw you. But Aaron Boone as a manager has no accountability. Every time we're talking about the same things. Yeah, you saw some good things did you? Like either you actually believe that and your expectations are on the floor, or you're just lying. And so back to Ed's point, I think it's more so the latter.
Yeah, I completely agree. I have no remix. He's not going to help, because it's very clear if, scratch all the X's and O's that we've just explained and all the reasons why. The one thing about Aaron Boone that's abundantly clear is, if you had to describe this whole operation in one word, it is politician. They are selling me something. And I understand this is a business. This is Hal Steinbrenner puts $300 million. He writes a check. Then some goober puts the money in an envelope and stamps Gary Sheffield's name on it. And then some goon walks it over and puts it down in the office. And then Gary walks over, takes the envelope, and now he's employed with the Yankees. His job is to go out there and play. Okay. But if he's not playing well, or he gets hurt, or he's not the best guy for the job, Hal Steinbrenner looks over at his GM and says, you need to find a solution to this problem. And then they go say, let's go get Bobby Abreu. They write a check. They come over, they walk in the door to compete, right? But once everything's happening, winning and losing, all that's done, okay, then the profits come in. But then also the fans are a part of the equation as well. Once the product is done, the fans have to make the decision, do I want to be a part of this or not? And then a lot of people, and I've seen this in our comment section a lot, is the solution here is to just stop going and stop watching. You think a team that takes place in the Bronx, New York, that is as touristy as Yankee Stadium really is, you think that you guys, Jake and I, if we just never go, we cancel the Yankee show, you guys think the Yankees operation stops? Are you joking? You guys really think, what are we saying here? This is the Yankees, based on their past, are going nowhere. So you shouldn't even root for it. It's a waste of your breath. It's a waste of your time. Don't even bother with that. Don't even bother with the idea or the concept. All you should be doing is look at who builds the rosters, who's on the field, who's in the minor leagues who potentially could be on the field, who scouts, and say, who's the problem? Because 15 years of failure. So now I've got to decipher who's the issue. Is it both of your issues, or is it just your issue? What's the problem? And then just tell us what you think should happen. But this whole idea that the Yankees, like, we should just be perfectly okay with it and just accept that Cashman's going nowhere, Boone's going nowhere, and the only way to make this go away is if Gary just puts his wallet away. They don't give a rip about my wallet. They don't care at all. I go to games for free anyway. So you think that I care? They don't care about my wallet. I'm gonna be eating ribeye steak. I'm going to a game in like 3 weeks. I'm gonna be eating steak and Brussels sprouts behind home plate for free. And you guys think that they care how much money I spend. I could go to buy a jersey with a name on the back of it, spend $90, $150 on the jersey, or not. The Yankees operation goes on. So this idea that we're going to protest our way into something changing, it is not. This is Hal Steinbrenner's call. Hal Steinbrenner is
Lakers fans thought that.
They sure did. Hal Steinbrenner has all the authority in the world. He either can decide, Brian Cashman, you know what? You've done a decent job for me. I like what you've done, because he can have that opinion. But we need something new. It's time. I just think this partnership has gone on long enough. You're a good man, a good friend. You've done a decent job, but we have a higher calling. I have a higher calling. So if that's the case and he makes that decision, only then can the Yankees really go to the next level. And until that happens, we're just going to root for this team because we love this team. I'm not going anywhere. Jake, I know you're not going anywhere. Most of us, regardless of what we say, you're not going anywhere. We'll see you tomorrow. And that's just how this goes. So very disappointing for a team that was in a situation where they clearly saw that the Orioles fumbled a game against the worst team we've ever seen in the Chicago White Sox, and yet came into Texas and acted like it was not even a spring training game. It was exhibition split squad. And so it's a reflection of the people up top. No other way to put it.
Well said. Okay. Closer role. Sounds fluid. First time ever. We're hearing, oh yeah, they're going to get creative at closer now.
Yeah.
I want to give you the floor here because you had something that really kind of ticked you off a little bit. When it came to Jack Curry's, and obviously you're not ticked off at Jack Curry.
Love Jack Curry.
But Jack Curry's tweet had something that definitely bothered you. And you actually texted me and you're like, this needs to be the first topic we talk about. And I was just thinking, I'm like, Gary, let's just wait until today plays itself out, because we've seen a lot of different things go down. You have no idea what's going to happen. Sure enough, we ended up spending almost an hour talking about just uninspiring baseball, enabling, and essentially just not holding anybody or anything or yourself accountable. So the Jack Curry tweet, do you have that in front of you?
Of course. Been in front of me for an hour, now an hour and 7 minutes. I couldn't wait to read it. So I'm not going to paraphrase. I'm going to read it verbatim. Jack Curry, and before I read it, I agree with what he said. He said, Boone said, the Yankees will get creative with the closer role in the short term. He said Holmes could still be in the mix. I don't think Boone wants to publicly say Holmes has lost his job, even temporarily. Expect the Yankees to go with matchups for the foreseeable future. End quote.
So he lost his job. That's what I heard.
So he's saying there he lost his job. But here's the catch. And Jack Curry, very smart guy. There's a reason he was hired at Yes. But here's the catch. He's admitting publicly that he thinks Aaron Boone will not call somebody out if they have not done the job correctly. That's what he's saying. Okay. Now, I actually had a follow-up tweet, which I didn't at Jack Curry because I'm not trying to start any issue. Obviously, it has no issue with Jack Curry. Here's my tweet, and you guys can decipher for yourselves. I said the Yankees seem terrified to let a failing player know he's failing. So instead, they feed the media word salad with unclear instructions on what to expect going forward. That's what happened. The Yankees essentially are saying we now need to get creative. We need to figure out which direction we need to go in. It took you till September 2nd to let me know that Clay Holmes is probably not the guy. And you didn't even say it in those words. We had to decipher, like it was the Zodiac, what you meant. And then now we have to go figure out how you're going to apply what you said. So technically, based on these words, Jack Curry even left. Now, do not cut him short. All of these words are important. He said, even temporarily, in reference to Holmes losing his job. So he's leaving out hope, not hope. He's saying that Boone really wants Holmes to get that role back.
Yeah, it's I also have to say this: defending, Clay Holmes or anybody for that matter holds no weight when you never like. What does that actually mean? What are you putting on the line? The whole point of a defense, right?
Mhm.
Like, if somebody comes at you, right, I have to put something on the line for it to matter. If I defend you, that's the whole point of a defense. I'm still putting it on the line. I'm literally going out of my way, like, to essentially clap back at the other person. But I'm also risking in the process this, and this, right? What is Boone risking?
Didn't the team get better by you actually agreeing to this? The team technically, by Clay Holmes no longer being in the designated closer's role, the Yankees already got better. If they actually do what Jack Curry suggests, right? They play the matchups.
This is literally what we were talking about yesterday.
Yes. Playing the matchups literally means that Clay Holmes is just not the ninth inning guy. We don't care who he's facing. We don't care if it's 1, 2, 3. We don't care if it's 7, 8, 9. We don't care if it's lefty, lefty, lefty. None of those things of context. We didn't do this for Mariano Rivera. You know why? Because it wasn't fluid. It wasn't creative. It was, he's the guy for the role. Get the hell out of the way. Holmes is not that guy. Yes. Thank you. So that's how that role played out. But he played himself into earning that role. Made a lot of sense. Clay Holmes hasn't earned that right. So yes, Aaron Boone should have just come out and said he's lost his closer role for now. And if he gets back to the Clay Holmes that we've seen him perform as, then I have no problem putting him back into that role. But he absolutely has to perform like that player before I'm comfortable doing that. Is that hard to say? How hard is that to say? It's not like you came out and said, hey guys, Clay Holmes stinks. No, you don't need to say all that. You don't need to talk like a fan. Give us real information. Tell us he's not performing like a closer very clearly. He's not himself, whether it's mechanical, whether it's just performance. He can say that stuff. And now Clay Holmes can say, okay, my manager believes I have to play like the best version of myself. Otherwise, I don't get to do the job. That's what he would hear. And now you get to go out there, just like Gleyber Torres, where Aaron Boone told you, you will not play second base unless you are the best version of yourself. And long and behold, Gleyber Torres is far and away the best option the Yankees have at second base. Why? Because they kicked him in the rear end, and now we have a different version. So, yeah, I thought this whole quote was, it was accurate and yet hard to look at all at the same time. Very rare tweet.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's Boone acting like, I mean, the running gag is Kevin Feige with the sniper rifle. Anytime there's a presser and you have a Marvel character, like an actor or actress is asked about the plot of a movie and be like, yeah, and it's like Feige's just like waiting, like, don't you say it. Boone acts like Kevin Feige has a sniper rifle just staring him down the scope because he beats around the bush so much. It's like, he says a whole, you said word salad. Exactly. The whole lot of nothing. He'll just say, yeah, he had some good spots and yeah, he did this. Or if they just straight up ask him, hey, Boo, like, he doesn't talk like a normal human being. You and I have a conversation. What is your favorite color? You're going to tell me what your favorite color is. What's your favorite album from an artist? You'll sit there and think about it. Then you'll answer. What's your favorite movie? Right? These are normal things. Okay. Are you going tomorrow? Are you going to go out and get some hot wings? Right? And you'll answer that question. That's a weird question, but okay, fine. Aaron Boone will sit there. Does not matter what they ask him. It can be, is Jason Dominguez in the plans? He'll be like, he's getting there. But what do you mean he's getting there? Like, what he says these things, like,
he doesn't have a front porch type of conversation. It's not a one-on-one conversation, which obviously we know technically
it's so
he was never going to do that. Like, managers don't do it, but you also need to do a better job of giving the perception that you are. Okay.
Yeah,
now
he's just
players do this all the time. They go, hey, what does it feel like to be sharing the field with this player who played 40 years ago? How does it feel? Now, players know there's an answer you're clearly looking for, and now I've got to regurgitate that answer you're clearly waiting for me to say. Yeah, I can't wait to share the field that this player played on. I always looked up to him, even though you never watched him play a day in your life, right?
Yeah.
So there's certain robotic answers.
I get that. I
that
do.
happen along the way, but all of the answers are robotic. You can literally, just as you said, ask him a direct question, okay, that he clearly knows the answer to. Hey, Aaron, do you think that Austin Wells will be in the lineup tomorrow? Obviously, he's 6 for his last 8, and I'm sure Yankees fans would love to see him in the lineup tomorrow. Aaron Boone knows the answer to this question. Here's what he'll do. He'll say, yeah, I mean, Austin Wells has been playing a pretty hot brand of baseball, and we definitely would love to have him in there, but we're gonna have to see how the matchups play out, and then obviously tomorrow morning we'll make that decision. You didn't say anything.
I just rolled my eyes at you imitating it. That's how annoyed I am.
You just said nothing. You absolutely said nothing. Essentially, what you said is, go kick rock. I haven't made a decision yet, and yeah, I make the decisions, you don't, which is so reminiscent of what he said on Talkin' Yanks. I make the decisions, you don't. It goes to show you the level of respect, and really he feels like the level of communication doesn't need to be there at all between the manager and the fan. Well, I'm here to tell you right now, we're the customer.
Yeah.
So at some point or another, you need to at least pretend like you give a rip about what we think. I get it.
If they had 90 wins, we're not talking about this.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. Results will cover this shit up, but we're talking about it. Okay. With the bullpen, real quick, because last night I didn't sleep. Could not sleep. I told you this.
You couldn't sleep? There's no way.
I know.
Wow.
So in typical Jake fashion, I decided to go on Savant. I decided to go on Baseball Reference. I think I live on these sites, man. I just love stats. I hated math, by the way. I never liked math in high school, college, any of that. I love stats though. Make it make sense. So I was looking at all the splits, Gary, and I came to the conclusion that first off, Mark Leiter Jr., who pitched today, can really only be used in the 6th inning.
Okay.
With his splits. That makes him pretty much useless, but good to know, I guess. Ian Hamilton would be your ideal 5th inning pitcher based on his splits. And, he's been really good in the 8th inning, but this year, not so good. I did mention he might be hurt. I think the injury hurt him. 5th inning, that'd be fine. The 7th inning, I pegged guys like Tim Hill, Tim Meza, who at times looked okay today and then got creamed. Scott Efros with a really good performance today out of just a heap of hell. And the last one, and this is really fascinating, Gary, I wanted to bring him up because I wasn't really aware of it. Lou Trevino not only has, he looks good in the 7th inning, he could be a closer option. He's got good splits in the 9th inning. Okay. And, because this is what happens when you do the research. I also came to the conclusion that Clay Holmes can only pitch in the 8th inning because he needs that happy medium. He can't be in a super low leverage situation. He needs some pressure. He can't have the super high leverage situation. So right in the middle, being a setup man, clean inning, he actually is really good in the 8th inning. He's really good in the 8th inning when they bring him in on a 2-inning, affair, right? So I like him for the 8th inning or don't use him. Tommy Kahnle, 8th inning or 9th inning. Luke Weaver, 8th inning or 9th inning. Jake Cousins, same thing. Marinaccio is much better in the 8th inning and actually gets crushed when you bring him on earlier in the game. So the last one I'll say, actually there's 2 more. Nick Birdie, who the Yankees have completely forgotten about. They told us all spring training, this guy, he's going to make the roster. We're really excited about his velo, all of this. I have no idea where Nick Birdie is. I mean, I assume he's in AAA, but I haven't heard anything about him. He is off the IL. He's on the 40-man roster. He has not been called up. I don't know how. Birdie has pitched well, and I'm not saying he's been good in the 9th inning. His splits, he hasn't really gotten a chance to pitch in the 9th, but I think if you're looking at potential, he has potentially the best skill set for the ninth inning. He's got the most velocity on the team at 97 miles per hour average, right? And this is somebody that has some devastating break on his slider. So I look at Nick Birdie as he's a guy that I'd like to see them experiment with. They talk about getting creative, right?
Okay.
And I know a lot of people mention Luis Heel. I say hold the phone on that. Luis Heel has never pitched in relief, ever, in the major leagues. You know who has? Clark Schmidt. My father brought this up. I mentioned it on a show 10, 20 shows ago. And he said, I think Clark Schmidt should close in the postseason. And I thought about it. I was like, that's interesting. And I went through his numbers. And sure enough, Clark Schmidt, in not a ton of opportunities in the ninth inning, 6 games to be exact, but batters have a .059 batting average against him. And he has a 0 ERA. So his stats are better in high leverage. So and honestly, it makes sense because when you watch him, it seems like he thrives when the bases are loaded. I don't know why. But this is somebody in Clark Schmidt that I think you try to be creative now. I don't think he needs to be built up into being a closer, Gary. This is the beauty of it. You have Clark Schmidt for the rotation now. He's going to help you win games, right?
Okay.
But I think guys like Nick Birdie, guys like Jake Cousins and Luke Weaver, these are guys that you should be using, Tommy Kahnle, you should be using, seeing if they can pitch in the ninth inning, right?
Right.
And also Scott Efros randomly had really good splits in the ninth. So these are guys that you should be just trying out based on the matchups. Use them. And then all you have to do, Gary, is get through, have these saves that you should have had be saves instead of blown saves. If you start having success, then you can pull the curtain away and you can make Clark Schmidt, who's probably not going to be in their playoff rotation, Clark Schmidt can be your closer. And to me, you have Clark Schmidt, he can come in for the 8th inning and pitch the 9th. He's got the stamina to do it. He's got 6 pitches. He doesn't use all 6, but he's got 6 pitches. He's got some velocity there. You know, I think Clark Schmidt, like my dad said this way back when, so he deserves credit. But Clark Schmidt deserves, I think he deserves a shot. I think that sweeper and the cutter, those two are going to be very important. As far as pitch run value, 6 on the sweeper, a 5 on the cutter. I think that's what we're looking at here, Gary. I think when they said creative and Aaron Boone wouldn't rule out Clark Schmidt or Heel, I think it's going to end up being Clark Schmidt in the postseason.
Well, first of all, I love that you did that research. So props to you, props to your dad for coming up with the idea. But how can anyone argue that this wouldn't be better? And I want to circle the idea that you actually just had that was hidden in what you said, is that they need to use Clark Schmidt, guys like Cody Poteet, right? Luis Heel. They clearly need the innings in the starting rotation right now. You can't just put Clark Schmidt, who has pitched 60 2/3 innings this year, and then just go relegate him to 1 inning of baseball after waiting all this time for him to come back to the field. But what you need to do is capitalize on the fact that he's built up to be a starter. You need those innings desperately. Probably the number one thing you need is starting pitching that keeps your offense, that's ranked number 2 in the league, in games. That's option number 1. Then when we get to October, the biggest thing for the Yankees, they're going to shorten the rotation anyway. They're not going to have 6 guys starting games. Cody Poteet will not touch a mound starting a game in the postseason, most likely, unless someone gets injured. So the Yankees should know we're going to go with our 4 hottest starting pitchers. You throw them in a rotation. And then the most high leverage outs in the season. Do you want it to be Clay Holmes again? Or is Clark Schmidt going to be better? I'm actually going to go off on a limb and say this, Jake, and maybe other people aren't comfortable saying this. I actually don't think if you put Luis Heel, if you put Clark Schmidt, you put maybe Jake Cousins in the closer's role, right? They do better regardless of which of those names you pick. I don't think it can get worse than what we are currently seeing. So based on what this player is in Clark Schmidt, He's a starter. Then when you get to October, as long as Rodon is doing anything at all, you should be trusting him in big games. I know it's not the most ideal situation. I know he's a guy with an ERA over 4, but we've seen the type of pitcher he can be in a short sample size. We've seen it, right? And also you have to look at a player's career and say, who can he be?
They wasted.
Exactly. The last start they completely botched. Carlos Rodon was lights out. Now he can show up his next start and just blow it up. Absolutely. But you have to trust the player that you paid $160 some million. He's got to pitch big in October. It just has to happen if you want to win. So if he does that job correctly, if Garrett Cole does his job correctly, and one other guy, well, Clark Schmidt shouldn't be necessary in October to pitch big innings. He has to go to the bullpen. Maybe Luis Gil is probably the other guy. I mean, you can flip-flop him. I don't have a problem with Luis Gil being the closer either at this point, because as bad as position as the Yankees are in at closer, I just don't know if you can even play spin the wheel with these players and be like, yeah, we ended up with a worse option. You really think Clark Schmidt is going to blow more games than Holmes has this year? Clay Holmes
I don't think he blows a single game. I think Clark Schmidt has the stuff. Because what was the thing I always said about Clark Schmidt? What was the one thing that I got on Clark Schmidt for?
Not ringing a bell. We talk about a lot.
The third time through the inning.
Oh, yeah. It's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while since we've talked about that. I mean, and he doesn't have to worry about that.
No. Mm-hmm. He's devastating at the beginning of games. Devastating. True. So I just feel like he's got such a repertoire. I mean, being in the ninth inning, having to win the game and come up and you're facing his sweeper and his cutter and the velo that goes with. I mean, that is not, and people don't get it, is that these random dudes that don't have big names, Clark Schmidt is not a Cy Young winner, but baseball now, anyone can have stuff, right? We've talked about that. Mm-hmm. But when you have stuff, you have control, you have velo, you have all of that. That is when you become an actual feared pitcher. And Clark Schmidt, whether people realize it or not, was becoming that. He was in the process of really figuring it out. I did just make mention his third time through the order. Like the last few starts he had before he got hurt, it seemed like he had gotten over that hump, Gary. So the point I'm making is that I think Clark Schmidt is just a damn good pitcher. I think as long as he's healthy, and by the way, shout out to the Yankees for finding him. I think he was a second-round pick. Might have even been a first. As long as he's healthy, he is going to be huge in October. Huge. Because I'll say this right now. They could bring him in. Maybe it's not ideal. They could bring him in the 7th inning and just say, you're done. Clark Schmidt is going to close this game out. You have no chance. He's going 3 innings, and you can't do anything about it. And that is the beauty of it, because then, you're not going to use him every single night either, but you could also if you only send him 1 inning, right? So there are different things that you can do. Will also mention Cody Poteet is not an option. He does not pitch well late in games. He is he's an early on opener. If the Yankees want to go that route, I actually think that would be a strategic way. You do an opener and then you go with maybe a Luis Gil to try to keep the innings down. It's his first ever postseason. Like, there are different things that you can do, but I mean, I was going through painstaking detail and I could not believe afterwards, like what I found, what I came away with. Tommy Kahnle's changeup is everything. That is the most dangerous pitch in the Yankees bullpen, period. It's got an 8 breaking pitch run value. Jake Cousins' slider has a 7. Marinaccio's fastball is a 7. Mark Leiter Jr. has a unbelievable splitter, and he's got great stuff, but he can't control. And basically, he just gets hit like hell. So I don't think he makes the postseason roster, Gary. I definitely don't want him on the postseason roster the way he's pitching. And there was one other thing I sent you, because I was going off on a tangent with this. Oh, the postseason roster. I think it's changed. I think you have your 7 starting pitchers, Cody Poteet being the 7th. I think there are ways to use him. He'll eat some innings. You also have Kahnle, Cousins, Weaver, Holmes, Birdie and Trevino. I think that is the direction I would go in. Birdie's got, velocity. He's got pitches that can, generate whiffs. I want more of that than pitching to contact.
That's why I don't want any sinker ballers in the closer's role. I just don't want to see it. I need to see guys that miss bats, and obviously Clark Schmidt misses more than a bat an inning. That's part of the reason why that's so good and that's so attractive. But as far as I'm concerned, the Yankees do have to stop making the closer's role look like rocket science. We're not asking someone to moonwalk across a lake. You're closing the ninth inning. Not an easy job, but it's not impossible. I know it was brought up on the broadcast today is we don't know who can do this role. Well, we know one player who can't. So go find the guy who can do the role. He's out there somewhere. And if he's not, then we can blame somebody else. But as of now, we're not in the off season. We're in the regular season, and we need to outrun Baltimore. Part of doing that is finding who between Clark Schmidt, Luis Heel, right? Canley, Cousins, who between those guys is going to close down the ninth inning? Is it just going to be committee? Do we have no idea who's closing games in October? Chances are high, guys, the Yankees are not going to just have no closer, no guy in the closer's role in October. The odds of that are so slim. I just think at some point or other, some name out there is going to have to separate themselves.
It's going to end up being one of Heel and Clark. I'm going to say it's Clark. I think they put Heel in the rotation. And I think that they'll feel confident in putting Heel in there because if he can't give them length, they have Stroman, they have Poteet, they have Cortez. You and I might be hearing that like, yikes. Like, I don't know if I want them coming in out of the pen, but that's the reality of the situation is that they do have those guys to be fair there. So I'll say that. But I think it'll end up being Clark Schmidt. Either way.
Agreed.
I think the Yankees, you can look at it multiple ways. I think looking at their bullpen last night, they definitely have a lot of different things that they can do. We actually had some bigger plans for the show. We were going to talk a little bit about what they can do to fix the bullpen in the offseason. We'll table that. Got a lot of names. There's a lot of opportunities for the Yankees to make sure that this isn't an issue again and that they don't have a closer going into October. Because another issue about today's game, Gary, being 10-2, now you don't get to try that out. That's another day that's gone by that you didn't get a chance to try somebody out in the closer role. So if games aren't close and you play uninspiring baseball, you're not even going to get a chance to see these guys in high leverage situations to close out games. So that's what I'll say there. Just quick shout out here. Our new member, Jalen Sestero, field level. Appreciate you. Our field level shouts go to Juan Cepeda, Kid from LI, Carlos Marrero, Jeff J, Ed W, Brian Fuchs, Ryan Hoffman, Rich Squires, Joshua Halleckman, Egyptian Magician, Nick Gomes, and of course, Jalen Sestero. Appreciate you guys for becoming members. If you want to become a member, definitely be sure to hit the join button below. You can also become a member by hitting the link in the description and the comments section below, as well as checking this. This will be out on audio, so you can also listen to this on audio. But if you're at this point, you probably already know that. So that I think is going to do it. We had a lot that we wanted to cover, but I mean, we covered a lot already. So,
I got the movie though on hand.
Yeah. What's the movie?
Yeah. So obviously today's topic was Aaron Boone, and he has a lot on his plate. He's got to go win a World Series. It's no nonsense. And it's going to start by what he does in September, holding guys accountable and pulling more out of this roster. So since we're on Boone, I'm going with the Boone Doc Saints.
I like it.
Great movie.
I've never seen it before, which I mean, everyone just audibly was like, yeah, Jake's never seen that movie before. I can already tell. But I like the pun. You've been on it. I got to give you a lot of credit for that. I also got to give everybody credit for backing me up with the whole Jaws thing, the last one. People that were like, nah, Jaws sucks. I was like, yeah.
Everyone's got an opinion and no comment.
Well, hey, we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. If you are still here, that means you have finished the episode. I don't have a trophy or a medal to give you, but you can drop in the comments section Boondock Saints, and we'll know that you made it this far. and we'll hit you with a like or something, weird emoji. But anyway, that is going to do it. We appreciate you guys. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Follow us on all social media. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
And like this video.